Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about something very important, and that is the elements of graphic design. Now the elements of graphic design, they are simply the building blocks that every designer uses to create visually appealing and effective designs, functional designs. And the reason I call them very important is because these are the things that make up graphic design, right? Like when you say building blocks, what do you mean? Building blocks of a building, they are like the things that consist of the building, like the cement, the sand, the granite, reinforcement rods and everything. And without these building blocks, you don't have a building. So the graphic design elements, they are the things that without them, you don't have graphic design, right? They are the things that make up graphic design. And I said they are very important because you can't have a good design, you can't have a functional design, you can't even have a visually appealing design without the building blocks of graphic design or without understanding them and what they are used for. Alright, so this is a very important video, especially if you're like a beginner or you're just trying to get into design and you don't know how to start or where to start from. This is an amazing place to start from, right? The elements of graphic design. Alright, so without talking too much, let's get right into the video. Alright, so the first element I'm going to be talking about is line. Alright, line. So basically a line is the most basic design element, and it is formed by connecting 2 points, right? So this definition is as old as time, especially if you're like a Nigerian. Here in our schools, when we learned about line, I can't remember what subject, but when we learn about line, our teachers always say a line is the shortest distance between 2 points, or rather a straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points, right? So as soon as you connect 2 points, you're left with a line, right? A line is the simplest design element, but it is one of the most powerful design elements, right? Because they divide your space, right? They make your design feel, it guides the viewer's eye. Okay, a line will guide the viewer's eye in your design. And we have different types of lines, right? We have straight lines, curved lines, thick lines, dashed lines, wavy lines, right? In this table I have here, the vertical line looks like a horizontal line, a diagonal line, a dotted line, a dashed line, zigzag, curved, wavy, spiral, loopy, thick and thin, right? We have different types of lines, and each of these lines, they give different feelings and different moods. A straight line can feel stable, right, while a curved line can feel more dynamic and playful. That's why if you look at all these children's posters, right, you see curvy lines, you see wavy lines. Why? Because it gives that playful vibe, but on more serious posters, like let's say finance or real estate, you see straight lines, right, because it gives that kind of serious look. Right, so you can see how just by using a simple line, you've kind of affected the emotional state of the person looking at the flyer, or you're appealing to a different kind of audience just by choosing the right line to use. Alright, so a line is a very important design element that you should not joke with. So the second design element we're going to be talking about is called a shape. Alright, so a shape is a closed form created by lines, colors, or textures. Once you create a line but you close it up, it becomes a shape, right? A line that is closed up becomes a shape. So we have different types of shape. You can have geometric shapes, like the basic shapes we know, like circles, triangles, squares, polygons, all those normal shapes we know, those are called geometric shapes, right? And then we have what we call organic shapes. So these are irregular shapes that are free flowing. So basically, like the shape of a leaf, that is an organic shape. So those shapes are not common shapes, they are not the regular shapes that we know. Some of them you probably won't even know their names. So those are what we call organic shapes, right? Shapes they help you organize your work, they create meaning, they add visual interest, right? So like if you take a look at this flyer here, you can see, if you look at the footer, if you look at the white footer, you see that white footer is a shape. The white footer at the bottom is a shape. On top of the footer, right, we have a blue shape, is a gradient, a blue gradient shape where the website is written on. that is also a shape, right? If you look at the left hand side, you have a dotted line. Now remember what I said about a line that is closed up. Once you have a line that is closed up, what do you have? You have a shape. So that dotted line is closed up, and that gives us a shape. So you can see how we've used shape on this flyer to kind of draw attention. We first of all use the white shape at the bottom for the footer, and then on top of that white shape we use two shapes to place sensitive information to draw the viewer's eye. Alright, so that's the importance of a shape, and that's what you can use shapes to achieve. So if you also look at this is a logo design that I did a couple of years back, and you can see, if you look closely, you're going to see a bunch of circles. And what is a circle? A circle is a geometric shape. So you can see how I made use of a geometric shape to create this logo. I made use of a geometric shape to create this logo by just adding them, you know, on and on and on and on. So that's what you can use shapes to accomplish as a graphic designer. Like, you cannot do without shapes. That's just the truth. In design, shape is a very important element that you're going to need to learn how to use over and over and over. All right, so the next design principle we're going to cover is called color. Color is a very important design principle. So color adds mood, it adds meaning, and it adds emotion to design. Right, we all know what color is. Well, some people don't realize that, especially maybe if you're new to design, you don't realize that color adds mood, it adds meaning and emotion to a design. As simple as changing the color of a design can change how a viewer will feel by looking at that design, right? As simple as changing the color. Color grabs attention, it sets the tone, and it helps create visual hierarchy. Color grabs attention, right? So if your design is plain, if your design is just plain black and white, like a text document maybe on Microsoft Word, it might not really grab attention. But the moment you put something like red, immediately, naturally, the human eye will be drawn to that color, right? Our eyes respond to color. Warm colors like red, orange, and yellow, they feel energetic, they feel warm, and they feel bold, while cool colors like blue and green feel calm and soothing. So if you notice, on like some party flyers, you're going to see colors like red. Why? Because it feels energetic, it feels energetic and bold, right? But some calm flyers, like let's say the finance industry, you're going to see blue and green being used. Why? Because it's calm and it's cool. Alright, so you can see how color plays a role in how viewers see flyers, right? How we respond to different types of flyers. Right, so in this image here, by the way, I got this image from minda.by. That's the website that I got it from. So right, so this is a color wheel, right? This is what is called known as a color wheel, and a color wheel is basically a wheel that shows primary, secondary, and tertiary colors, right? And if you look at this color wheel, you're going to see the colors are grouped in, they are succeeding each other. I don't know if that makes sense, right? Okay, so if you start from blue, violet, blue green, yellow, orange, you can see that they are just transitioning smoothly. From blue you're going to get green, from green you're going to get yellow, from yellow you're going to get orange, from orange you're going to get red, and that's how it goes on and on and on. So the color wheel is a very important chart that you need to understand as a graphic designer, right? So there are entire books, there are entire YouTube videos on just color alone, so it's not something that I can really dive deep in this video, but I just want you to understand color is an element of graphic design that you need to understand. There's also something called the color theory, right? It's just a set of rules that you can use when you're choosing colors or when you're working with colors. So color is something that you need to master as a designer. It's something that you need to have a decent understanding of, right? So the next design principle we're going to talk about is texture. What is texture? Texture is the surface quality of a design element, right? It is the feel or appearance of a surface. Basically, how does a surface feel? How does it feel? How does it look? That's what texture is. That's what texture is, right? Now texture adds depth to a design, it adds interest and realism. to a design and it makes it more engaging. That's what texture does to a design. So if you look at this texture here, you can see that this is a fabric material. So just by looking at it, you already know what to expect. You already know that okay, this is a fabric. You already, because we can encounter fabric on a day-to-day basis. So just by looking at this, right, there's a lot of information that it conveys subconsciously to our mind, right? If you look at this one, this is a paper. Alright, it conveys certain information to your mind. So you can imagine if this paper was used for the background of a particular flyer, right? It would help pass certain information without even writing that information with text. I don't know if you understand. That's what texture does. It makes flyers more engaging. It makes designs more engaging. So if you look at this design that I did, this is an art cover that I did a couple months ago. And if you look at the background, you can see that I use kind of like a paper texture. Right? I use a paper texture for this design. And now imagine if I use like a plain background for this design compared to this paper texture. Like you can see that this paper texture makes it look more engaging. It makes it more interesting, more catchy to the eye. So that's the power of texture in a design. The next element of design we'll look at is called space. Every area on a design is space. Every area on the design is actually space, but we have positive and negative space. So if that area on the design is occupied by a design element, that's positive space. But if it is not occupied by any design element, it's called negative space. Alright, so good use of space creates balance, it creates focus, and it creates a breathing room, while poor use of a design can be crowded or confusing. Alright, so once you don't use space properly, your design is going to be confusing. People will not understand. There will be no proper flow. Okay, I wish I could have put in a poor design here, but I just didn't. So instead of showing you a poor design, let me show you a good design. Alright, so if you look at this, look at how space was used in this design. Alright, so first of all let's pay attention to the positive space. Positive space, like I said, that's the area occupied by design elements. So you can look at the image, two boys playing football, that's positive space. Look at the text, the typography, that's positive space. You can see how balanced it looks. Now look at the negative space. So the space around the flyer that is not occupied by anything, that allows the design to have breathing room to breathe. Okay, and if you look at the middle of the flyer, in between those two boys, what can you see? You can see the map of Africa. You can see how they creatively made the map of Africa by using negative space, by positioning their elements in such a way that they created the map of Africa with the negative space. So this is an excellent example of negative and positive space coming into play to make an excellent design, right? If you look at this one as well, you can see a bird in the middle, a picture of a bird in the middle. That's negative space being used efficiently. If you look at this brand style guide that I created for a project, by the way, if you want to learn how I generated this, because I used AI to actually generate this logo and further develop this entire brand identity. So if you want to know how I did it, you can just click the link at the top right and I'm going to show you how I did it from scratch. Alright, so my point is that I use space in this design. You can see the space between all the elements, all the shapes, the images, the text. You can see how space was efficiently used to make this design easy to comprehend and easy to view. Right, so that is how to use space properly in a design. Right, so the next element of design I'm going to be talking about is typography. So typography is the art and technique of arranging text in design. It's as simple as that. It's just how to arrange text in design. That's what typography is. It includes the choice of fonts, sizes, spacing, and alignment to make written content readable and visually appealing. When we talk about typography, we're talking about how to choose the right font for a design. Alright, so we have different types of fonts. So you need to know what font will work in this particular industry. You need to know what style of font to use. You need to know what size of fonts to use. You need to know what font combination is going to work. You need to know the proper spacing. You need to know the proper alignment That is what typography is talking about. Typography carries personality because the different types of fonts convey different meaning. Right, so we have what we call serif fonts. Right, serif fonts, they feel traditional, and we also have what we call sans serif fonts, and they feel modern. We also have what we call script fonts. Those ones, they feel elegant or creative, right? So different type of fonts carry different meaning, they carry different emotions. So typography is all about knowing what font to use per time for which design. You ask yourself, what feeling am I trying to convey? Okay, when people look at this design, what emotion should they have? And that should guide what font you use. All right, so that's what typography is all about. So the last but not the least element of design that we're going to talk about is scale and size. All right, so size or scale, this refers to how large or how small elements appear in a design. Size creates, it helps to create visual hierarchy, and it shows which parts are the most important in a design. Larger elements grab attention first, while smaller elements provide supporting details. Playing with scale also adds contrast, balance, and interest to a layout. Alright, so size and scale is something that is very important in design. Okay, like I just said, it adds hierarchy to a design. Hierarchy is a principle of design. I'm going to talk about that in another video, right? But hierarchy is a principle of design. That's basically the order of arrangement of things. Alright, when you order elements by size in terms of importance. Alright, so if we look at this flyer now, what's the biggest thing on this flyer? Right, is the image. Is the image. Why? Because I was trying to pass a message with this image. So once you look at the image, you, even if you don't really understand what I mean, the next thing you look at is the text, and the next text that will catch your eye is June. June, right? June is the biggest text there. So you start asking yourself, what about June? The next thing you see is going higher in June. All right, going higher in June, that will now allow you to make sense of the image. The image is a Ferris wheel. Okay, no, it's not a Ferris wheel. I can't remember what it's called, but it's not a Ferris wheel. I can't remember what it's called. But the image is basically, it takes you higher, right? If it's like a ride in an amusement park, and when you get into it, it takes you to the top, which means it's taking you high. So you can see how the copy connects with the text, but that's not the point. We're talking about size and scale. So you can see how size and scale has guided my eyes, right, from the image to June to going higher. All right, then if you look at the bottom, you're going to see other details. You're going to see a date, 1st of June 2025. You're going to see a barcode and some arrows, right? If you look at this flyer as well, you can see that in the middle you have a big tambourine which draws the eye. You have the headline written, you have the images on top of the tambourine. That's what attracts your eye first. Why? Because that's the most important information on the flyer. All right, before you now start seeing smaller details that give you more information. All right, so that's how size and scale is used in design. All right, so to recap, we talked about 7 design elements. We talked about line, shape, color, texture, space, typography, and size. All right, so just to clarify, these are not all the design elements. All right, they are way more than this, but I just chose to talk about these 7. All right, so these are basic building blocks. They are the things that comprise of the design, and are the things that you must understand if you're going to be a good designer. All right, so if you watched up until this point, it means you're very serious with your design career, and I want to celebrate you for reaching this moment. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I'd like you to like this video if you got any value from it. All right, also share to a designer you think would need this vital information, right? And of course, subscribe to this channel because I'm going to be dropping more and more amazing content like this on this channel. I'm also going to create a video about the principles of design. Right, today we talked about the elements of design. I'm going to talk about the principles of design. So at the time you're watching this video, I may have already dropped the video, so you can just check my channel. It's going to come right after this one. But if I've not dropped it, let's say you're watching it very early, then you can rest assured that within this week or next week I'm going to drop the principles of graphic design. All right, so stay tuned to catch that video. All right, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.